Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Lighthouse Sessions. I'm excited. I have my new friend, Brandon Yager, with me. And Brandon gets bonus points because he's got a professional sound setup. So I'm excited. Brandon, why don't you tell my audience a little bit about who you are and what you do? And of course, you can introduce Deborah to this conversation as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure she'll enjoy coming on and having a conversation. We can do both of us too. We got two chairs here, so at some point we can knock that out. Labels. I'm a high performance coach. I'm a trainer of transformation. My wife and I, we do retreats. We have a team of coaches. We do high performance coaching as well. What got me kind of started on this path was a mentor, my grandfather, Pop. When I was 11 years old, he started mentoring my brother and I. Probably because my dad lost his job, and so it was a way to help us focus on, hey, give us 30 minutes a day. He had us listening to cassettes of Jim Rohn, Brian Tracy, Zig Ziglar, Tommy Hawkins, all the greats of kind of installing that in a young age. And that really propelled me to just get right into real estate at 18 years old. So I got my real estate license, built a real estate brokerage, took it to an online company statewide in the state of California, and just fell out of love with real estate. I just was not passionate about it. I love investing. I still consider myself, heavy into real estate investments and doing deals. That's a very fun thing for me. I love that piece of my brain that works around money and finding deals. I hit an early level of success in my 20s, and then I just was hitting the glass ceiling. So I hired a coach, Rhonda, and she kind of opened this world up to me. I thought she was, just going to open up her business in a box. And she's like, go take these trainings, Brandon. She's like, your business is actually okay. She's like, you're the problem in your business. And I think it's for entrepreneurs to hear that when you continue to do things that don't work, it's like, stop doing shit that doesn't work. That was me. I had my ego in the 20s for sure. And, I was in an unhealthy relationship, gained weight. I gained 42 pounds. I was coping. I was numbing, drinking too much, smoking too much, all the things. So she said, go take these trainings. And it was NLP, Neuro-Linguistic Programming. And after my first, training, I literally put $100,000 of commissions in my real estate business on the books. I broke up my engagement with my ex, and I started getting healthy, right? And got my confidence back. I think there's so many of us that have some type of story like that, or would like to have a story like that. And that's what got me into training and coaching, because I realized I don't want to just help real estate people or the industry of real estate. I want to help everyone. And lo and behold, they kept saying, as a practitioner, as a coach, and I kept saying at level 1, and then I went back to level 2, and I was like, I'm not a coach, I'm not a practitioner, I'm a broker, I'm an entrepreneur, calling me a coach. That was my ego for sure. And so many people have this kind of sometimes when they're getting into this work, they go, but I don't want to be a coach. And I think what I realized is how much I desire to help people, much deeper than just selling a product, selling a service. It was true life transformation. And so in that training is when I met my wife, Deb, and we've been together for 13 years. And so the very next year we did a speaker training together, and we basically teach everything that we learned. And then we brought in all these new modalities and techniques to help business owners, practitioners, coaches truly take their life to the next level. And I absolutely love being on stage, and I love doing it with my wife, my queen.
I love it. So hi to Deborah. She's with us in spirit today. Now you just came off a 5-day event. Tell me a little bit about that, because I think one of the things I see a lot, and you probably recognize this, a lot of visionary entrepreneurs, we rise quickly, hit something that we think is outside there, but usually it's something inside of us. Then we burn it all to the ground, and we're like, okay, this time it's going to be different. And I'm a big fan of Einstein's definition of insanity. If we keep doing the same things, we're just, it's a rut which turns into a grave. So what was your weekend or your 5-day event about? And what did you take away from it?
We kind of have this overarching brand, Your True Alchemy. And I love alchemy. We've been to Egypt. We went to Egypt twice last year. And so we're falling in love with Egypt, taking global tours to Egypt, Guatemala, Lake Atlan, and Maya. And there's just so much ancient wisdom that it's like, oh, it's all brand new. It's like, this stuff has been around for thousands of years. And I think all of us know this stuff. Like, we truly, it's in us. It's just remembering. It's a remembering of who we are, what we want to do, what's our calling, and that was like kind of my reconnection to knowing myself. I'm 40 years old, and I felt like in December when we went to Egypt, I was like, for the first time, had this incredible energetic connection. And I was like, oh, wow, it's awesome. I know myself now. And part of that was this life alchemy that we do. So we have vision alchemy, business alchemy, 3-day events, and they lead to this 5-day breakthrough. And it's really a life alchemy breakthrough event where most people that haven't figured out how to consistently create transformation, it's awareness. We're not aware of what we don't know. So step 1 is getting aware. And step 2 is having the tools to clear out limitations, false beliefs, negative emotions, the story that's in our head. I had very little fear starting in real estate at 18. And so I just took action, built a business, cold calling, making sales, because I saw my dad get laid off at 11 years old. Excuse me. I saw him get fired from the corporate world at 11 years old. And I was like, if that's what the corporate world does to a man of 35 years who couldn't sell his services to this company, I recognize that that's not the game I want to play. And so I knew very early on, plus my papa, my mentor, helping me, I knew I wanted to be in business for myself. I wanted that, probably you could call it control. I wanted my own destiny. And that's really what this training is about. The retreat, we get intimate with, the stories, the filters. We have so much information coming in our world now, and it's even faster than it was 20 years ago. And we're consistently deleting, distorting, and generalizing all of this information. And we do that deletion and distortion process based on what's already programmed in our subconscious from generational, genealogical, mom, dad, great, great, great grandfather, a whole lineage. And then, this lifetime, of course, right? 0 to 7 years old, we have so much stuff that happens that we're just a sponge soaking up our environment. People don't necessarily consciously think about this. But the reality is we have these situations, I call them like significant emotional events in our childhood that shape us. And that's really what we start to make decisions based on how those events shaped us. And then when we grow up and we go, get into the corporate world, we create success, but then we get tired of doing what we're doing, or we lose purpose, lose passion. And then we go to get in business for ourselves. What we don't realize is we have to create new skills. We have to create a new identity. And so many of us struggle with that identity piece right there. Is like, who am I and what am I supposed to be doing? And all of these little events stacked upon, multiple times, not to mention our lineage stuff, which all of us came from somewhere. And most likely we had some horrific things to get where we are now as a family tree. And so these things are very much energetic blocks. They block us, whether it's our communication, whether we, how we stay healthy, how we, build a business, and the way we think about ourselves. And so many people, they struggle with that. I think a lot of negative self-talk happens from these events. So people will beat themselves up. They have perfectionism, imposter syndrome, lack confidence, but in other areas of life, things are going great. But then there's some areas that just seem to kick our ass, right? And that's really what our first level 1 life alchemy retreat's about, is let's clear out the garbage. So we're a clear conduit, and we can bring in the frequency and this vibration. We're all just vibration. I mean, we're 72% water. And if we can vibrate at a higher level for communication, consciousness, we can attract better clients. We can charge more money. We can do it in less time, right? We can have relationships that we love, build a team we're absolutely proud of. And that's really what our whole event is like level 1's breakthrough, level 2's kind of mastery, learning how to do an 8-hour breakthrough process. And then we kind of take it to speaker training. So once you get good, how do you do podcasts, share your story, and get paid to do that, right? Whether you want to do a TED Talk, get on stages, and start doing events. And I think what we've seen, we've done close to 84 events since 2014. We did events all through. Thank goodness we were in Austin, Texas in 2020, because we did events, hotels were sitting absolutely vacant, and we just kept doing events, right? And we had 70, 60 people in intimate container. And we always said, the work that we're doing in these rooms, in these containers, like it's not what's happening out there, right? There's too much fear. There's too much, I call it fear porn. There's just an installation of consistent fear and doubt and uncertainty. And that's what's keeping us stuck. And I think what we're going to see over the next 10 years, even now we're seeing it, is what, if anything, 2020 taught us is we got to come together and we got to do it in person. I love Zoom. I love be able to expand the business and expand our reach. And there's something that I think is magical about being in person, connecting with humans in our frequency fields, and actually working on our stuff and doing the great work.
I love that. And I think, the way I see the world, and this is my worldview, things like Zoom, coming online with video conferencing, it'll get you 80% there, but it's not the same energy level as in person. Now, for what it's worth, I also know a lot of introverts are like, I'm happy on Zoom. Okay. Are you though? But I think that's the key is, as a species, I mean, you go back in the earliest recorded history, there's cave paintings of people sitting around a campfire.
Right.
It wasn't some lone guy off hunting and, he drew his own picture. It was usually about the family and the hunt as a tribe. And I think you and I are going to have some fun with this, because I believe everybody out there has a tribe. And when you find your tribe, the energy, and I'm not one of those people to go to, Comic-Con, but the energy those people generate about whatever they're passionate about, I'd take that energy over, as you call it, the fear porn. By the way, that's probably going to make the show notes, because people will be like, oh my God. But I think that's what doom scrolling is. It's, by reinforcing your fears, you're justifying not leaving your house and trying things. Is that a fair statement?
Very fair. I'm a big outdoorsman. I love to hunt, fish. My dad taught us that. Camping, it's like, it'd be like, if we wanted to go camping, Jeff, would we do it on Zoom or would we go build a fire in the woods? I mean, and I love Zoom. It's absolutely an incredible tool, right? And it allows us to do ours, right? And do online virtual events, which you can absolutely create incredible success and massive exposure for yourself, your business, your clients. And there's just something magical about sitting down with someone next to you and doing, a process that you can see them let go of 35 years of baggage, whether you want to call it trauma, you want to call it just a family feud, whatever it is, you're just like in awe of that frequency. And again, it goes back to belief systems. If someone believes that they're an introvert, I believed I was an introvert, even though I was doing real estate. People kept telling me, I don't feel like you should be a real estate person or a real estate broker. They're like, I see you on stage. And that was years before I actually started getting on stage. My wife, she has an incredible story of how she literally was an introvert, and she has this incredible story in Vegas and, being a stripper, and yet she could do that, but she couldn't get on stage to show her intelligence. And because she says this, she thought she was too stupid to do what we now do. Right. And so we all have these belief systems, which creates an identity. And and that's the biggest thing, what we teach is language. Gosh, we won't learn language in school. Like, school is struggling to teach human beings how to communicate. It doesn't even matter if it's business school. I don't care what school. We don't learn deeper language. And most people were trained, programmed, and focused on, like, don't run in the house. What are you thinking about? Running in the house, right? Our parents teach us. It's just this easiest thing. Don't think of a pink rhino. About a pink rhino. Like, we are programmed to say what we don't want, to focus on what we don't want, and then we're shocked when it shows up in our business, or it shows up in the form of a human being we're dating or a person we're hiring. And so that program is such a construct that we have to, like, peel back these onions of the layers of the onion and just go, why are we still communicating? Because what we do is we're speaking spells. And this is where the esoteric kind of spirituality piece comes in of Egypt. Ptah was a creator god in Egypt. And, his thought to create reality conceived in his heart, and then he spoke it into existence. God said, let there be light. And so we've got to learn how to communicate at the absolute deepest level, because that's a frequency, right? Our persona, our personal frequency, personal name is a vibration. And this is where business owners, we're not necessarily conscious of how to communicate. It's less important of sometimes what we say and then in the way and how we say it, how we deliver that, right? The right tonality. Are we coming at it with communication from our heart, or are we angry and resentful about something? And that was a big thing for me, breaking through, being an angry person. I'd blow up on my team in my 20s because I was just like, I was a driver. I was like, get it done. And if somebody couldn't do it good, I didn't understand. I was like, what do you mean you can't make calls? Like, watch me and then go do it. Like, model me. And I didn't realize people had their own stuff, right? They just like everybody, we all have our own pile of crap, right? And it's like, how do we focus on somebody else's?
I think the key, I'm going to pull it out and not to put Deborah up on the stage again, but you mentioned the identity piece. And I am obsessed with identity because took me 50 years of my life to realize that other people need to, first of all, own their identity, then they need a little time to grieve it, and then they need to step into the next one. I'm one of those impatient people. It's like, okay, here's the identity, get here now, let's go. And I think it's fascinating that, your wife was more comfortable stripping than getting on stage and speaking. Like, that tells me a lot about the identity piece, because, it's a role we play. And I think that's the thing about entrepreneurs. We're more likely to have multiple identities, and, we're the one who, whatever happens because we do it. Whereas we need to recognize that our employees aren't quite that level. It's not a question of they don't want to do something. Most of the time, they either don't have the identity or the knowledge of what's possible. Is that a fair comment?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely the skill set of the knowing how, for sure. It's, being an entrepreneur, I don't think it's for everyone. I think some people really try hard at it. And I think there's an intuitive, like some of us just have the gift, right? Whether it's great grandfather, nobody in my family had done real estate, but then I started talking to my grandfather, and like 3 generations back, in North Carolina, we were like tobacco farmers. So we kind of come from a background of farmers. My dad was from Kansas. He had, that's just our background, farming, ranching. And, he would buy a plot of 40 acres and then split it up. And so it's like, there's a lineage thing too, and that skill set of how we get that, become who we are. But the identity thing is huge. I remember going through training thinking, I'm a real estate broker. Like, my identity was completely built around being a broker, whether it was ego, whether it was self-worth, whatever it was, I considered myself, that's who I am. And then it was a massive, this was probably when my first training was 26, 25, somewhere in there, 27. Is when I started to realize I'm not just a real estate broker, right? We're not just a trader, a doctor, an attorney, an influencer. We're so much more than that. We're so much more than we think we are any moment in time. And that was my kind of the shedding of the snake, the shedding of the skin, was realizing I can be so much more. I can be a transformation person. I can help people beyond just the business or the sales piece. And that was really empowering. Like, that was something that's huge. That was a big awakening for me, was not being tied to such an identity. And a lot of us, when we've been doing something for 30 years and we've got 3 degrees on the wall, like, it's hard to, I cut compassion for you, because it's hard to just strip that away and say, who am I? And I remember when I literally said, I'm gonna let my broker's license go. Like, I don't care anymore. Like, that's not who I am. And it's already this like kind of matrix we live in, right? You gotta have a license to do this. You gotta have a certification to do that. And I just kind of laugh about it now, because thinking more like an entrepreneur, a problem solver, I'm a critical thinker. Like, that's what we really are,
Well, and Brandon, I think it's funny because most of the people I know who have jobs, they'll either say, I work in real estate, or I am a realtor, but that's their sole identity bucket. They've got one thing. And I think that's the thing with entrepreneurs. Ask us who we are. It depends on the day, the time, random things in the universe. But I think one of the hardest pieces for me to accept, as I was on my journey and as I was working with coaches, they kept saying, the good news is everything bothering you or holding you back it's the guy in the mirror. And I'd be like, screw you, it's not my fault. And then I went, wait a minute, if it is my fault, that means I can fix it. And then I went, yay, it's all me. And I think most people don't see that as a positive.
You're so spot on. Like, that's what Rhonda did for me. You know, I was struggling to break through the $1 million mark. I was making $500,000. I'd hire more agents. I'd make the same amount of money or a little bit more. And then I was like, where's my net profit? It was like trying to catch water in your hands. It was like, what the hell's going on here? And it was frustrating as hell. And Rhonda's like, Brandon, you're the problem in your business. And you know what? Entrepreneurs, I definitely didn't want to hear that at 25, 24 years old when I hired her, you know, and she absolutely kind of smacked me metaphorically. And she was making $20 million a year. And I was like, this woman can manage a team of 105 people. She was beautiful just in the way she led, the way she communicated, and just led with this empowerment, but also this like confidence in her authority through her language. Her team, you could feel, respected her. And I was like, I can barely keep 12 people on my roster here. Like, what's going on? And that was it. She was like, where are you not taking radical self-responsibility? And I was like, because I kept saying one of my biggest limitations was nobody wants to work anymore. There's no good people out there, right? That's a huge thing, especially for coaches too, when they're afraid to hire that second employee, team member, whatever. And so I was saying that, and I was like, I can make a lot of money. I just can't keep any of it. So those are like my two biggest limitations. And I hear all the time with coaches, with practitioners that are doctors, nurses, they're done with the current traditional medical system, and they're moving into functional medicine, they're moving into energy and holistic work, you know, and they're like, I'm not good with business, or I'm not good with tech. And if we just keep telling those stories, that's the problem right there, is like, what are we telling ourselves to compensate and justify our lack of results or our limiting thoughts? And that's what really drives our behavior there. It can hurt the business, because what we're doing is we're protecting the little ego. We're protecting our little self that is, you know, it's why we're not where we want to be. And so we justify it with our reasons and excuses. That was a huge thing for me, was waking up to taking that responsibility. Cause and effect is one of the first things we teach. You know, it's a universal law. If you're effect, you're pointing, you're blaming the finger, you know, it's someone else, something outside of you, some organization, some situation. And if you're taking, you know, radical self-responsibility, you're at cause. That's agency. That's free will. That's like, hey, you know what? I'm not the best. Maybe I can grow and get some new tools and learn some skills that'll cause me to get 40% better results in my life, my business, my health.
I love that. And I think, for the record, I have a few friends who publicly they label themselves as high performance coaches, and they teach tactics. So you can guess how well that works for them and their clients. I just one of those people, I'm an entrepreneur. If I got to do something, I do it. But doing this inner work has been fantastic, because again, you know, I hear people all the time, you know, oh, the Democrats are in the White House. Oh, the Republicans are in the right. Like, everybody wants to blame something. You know, oh, COVID shut down. Oh, COVID opened. Oh, we're dealing with work from home versus work in the office. Like, everybody wants to blame something out there. And by the way, I think that's safety in the doom scroll. You can say, well, I don't have to take responsibility. I didn't fail today, without admitting I didn't also try. But, you know, we can say, oh, I didn't fail today because, you know, there's a war in the Middle East. Well, I'm sorry, but there's been war in the Middle East for as long as I can remember, and long before that. But I love the idea that we can take ownership. So let's talk about the language people are using when they come to you, because I'm obsessed with language. And, you know, I really noticed, I'm starting to hate marketing, because almost everything, 95% of marketing is doom and gloom. And now I go, what are they trying to get me to buy because of that? So language is everything. So what is somebody saying to themselves before they come work with you as a high performance coach? Because I actually believe you when you say that.
Yeah, that's a great question. And like, I feel like a high performance coach is a way to, you know, work with entrepreneurs, high performers. The difference that sets really a lot of the work we do is Neuro-Linguistic Programming, NLP. Tony Robbins, this is the foundation of what he does. They created these bunch of guys came together, Bandler, Grinder came together in the 70s, and we're playing around with techniques, how to make the subconscious mind work. And what they did is they modeled therapists, they modeled hypnotherapists, they modeled all these basically counselors, coaches, and brought together a tool of techniques. Have you heard of NLP, Jeff?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm a huge fan. I think it's, I think I read my first Tony Robbins book. I was probably about 16. So it's
very cool. Yes, you get it. And NLP, for those that don't know, it's the science of communication. It's the science and the process behind all things communication, which is spoken language and unspoken. We forget body language. We forget facial expressions. I've seen so many times where people come in and they're not aware of somebody's body language, because that's 55% of our communication. So that's not in the top of our mind awareness when we're sitting down at a networking event, right? Or we're meeting somebody for the first time. So volume, tonality, the way we come in, if we come in super strong, super intense, we're going to break rapport. We're going to break trust. And neuro-linguistic programming, what it's really taught me is just this process and a trail of techniques that when you start to really listen and you get into peripheral and you start to see all the things that I used to miss. I built my real estate business on calling, literally cold calling leads and talking to sellers. And so the only time I was able to, the way you build rapport on the phone is purely listening to their tonality, the way how fast they talk, how slow they talk. You listen to their voicemail and you model back their voice. People that are like each other tend to like each other. And so, it's not just surface level, which most entrepreneurs, they're surface level in how they build rapport and how they build trust and communicate. And what these tools allow you to do is go deeper. It allows you to go much deeper to the subconscious level, because the 95% of who we are, our body's intelligence, our body's brilliance, that's our belief systems, our attitudes, our values, our routine thoughts, feelings. This is truly how to get inside and really work with someone within their own model, with the way they think of their world and who they are and their identities, their emotions, their reactions. And that's really the difference that I'd say. I see doctors that have decades of experience, but medical school never taught them how to communicate with a patient, like how to literally drop in with them and spend more than 5 minutes instead of telling them who they are and what they should do. Most people, I think where we're failing as a society right now is, are we listening, active listening?
Yeah.
Are we taking copious notes and actually saying, hey, I want to understand Jeff at a deeper level. How can I serve you? How can I help your business? What's your greatest problem, right? What's a challenge that you would regret not following 6? So we have all these things where coaches have been told all these great techniques, and there's a lot of good stuff out there. There's somatic work. Hypnosis is the basis of like 80 to 90% of what we do. Hypnosis is truly the early days, 350 to 400 years ago. That was the early modern way of healing. And before we started doing all drugs and all this stuff. And so the language piece is what we're missing in school. It's what we're missing as a society, right? To connect at an absolute soul, heart-centered level. And it's because we've never been taught things like, when you're thinking big picture versus down in the specifics, basic language patterns that absolutely help relationships is they go, there's no communication in this relationship. And then people go, oh yeah, there's no communication. It's like, well, what specifically who specifically is not communicating to whom? And is it possible that there's no communication in this relationship? Are you guys come home and you're quiet all day, all night, all morning, and then you do it again? Like literally no one talks. So we have these.
But even that's communication, isn't it?
Yeah.
Not good communication.
Yeah. It's such a distortion. And that's one thing when we're working with, couples or working with business owners that are partners in the business. Communication is everything. And so one of the most simplest patterns that we help people learn is what we call meta model. It's what specifically, who specifically, when specifically, how specifically. When you get specific, you get people out of the big picture clouds. For some of us visionary entrepreneurs that go, you know what, that's a great question. Let me get more specific with you, right? It's like when we delegate a task and we're like, this is not what I wanted. why didn't you get it done right? They're like, I didn't have enough details. I didn't have enough specificity. And so for the people that are up in the visionary clouds, that's a language pattern that works really well. For the detailed people, sometimes you have to say, you know, they're so detailed, right? They don't see they're looking at the bark. It's like, well, what's the purpose of this? What's the highest intention? Where are we going with this? What's the bigger picture? And so just knowing that range of that, there are big picture thinkers, there are details. How can we create more flexibility in our communication? And that's really the goal here, is becoming flexible in body language, in, you know, specific language patterns, so that we can just, it's not like we're trying to, I think a lot of people like the tactics. Tactics is an interesting word. I look at it as, how can I help someone get into rapport with them so they can get in rapport with themselves? Because a lot of people don't realize we're out of rapport with our subconscious. Our conscious mind is trying to run the show. It's only about 5% of us. Creativity, thinking, reason, logic. We need that to make decisions. But the 95% of us is our habits, behaviors, belief systems. Most of that stuff, our values, that's unconscious. And so it's so unconscious, out of our awareness. And then we're just like, this doesn't make sense. I need to understand. I got to make the right decision. I don't want to make a mistake again. And we've got to bridge those two minds. That's the integration that we do in our retreats, is really helping people realize we can be more congruent, more whole, more aligned if we're communicating, optimizing the body.
Well, and I think, so full disclosure, I decided last year I'd mentor people professionally, and I decided I was going to mentor my kids, because it was like, why am I mentoring strangers for money and not mentoring my kids for the legacy piece? And I think the word this summer is going to be rapport, because you said it very well. If we're not congruent and have rapport with ourselves, we put this little facade up front and we wonder why people see through it. And, you know, I'm fascinated. I'm a huge fan of Bob Berg, and Bob and we talk about authenticity a lot. And I was like, why is this such a hard word for people? And the realization is, if they're not sure who they are, how do they know they're being authentic? And if you're not authentic, how do you have an authentic connection with another human being?
Absolutely. That's so it's so true. Authenticity, it's one of the highest frequencies when it comes to emotions. You know, authenticity is like right up there with love, just complete joy. Because when you're so authentic, even if somebody doesn't like your realness, that's on them, right? That's they have to figure out why that story triggered you, which is what we do in our speaker training. We teach people how to share their story, because the mess is in the message. Your message is yes.
I'm seeing something weird here, but, you know, I used to hear the saying, turn your mess into your message. And I realized that a lot of really smart people, a lot of really intellectual people, they want to present the perfect persona, and they want to say, I'm an expert, and they want to be up on the stage. Whereas it's the people who say, yeah, I did some weird stuff. I broke this. I fell down on my face. I got back up. I'm still alive. You know, like, look at what's his name? Robert Downey Jr. Literally face down in the gutter. And then Hollywood said, you know, we'll give you one more shot. And look what he did with it.
Yeah, no, for sure. And that's one of the biggest things, is when you clear out the negative emotions, the stories that keep you playing small, keep you stuck, the lack of confidence, just the part that, like, we literally have a part in us, the behavior that's acting out, that tend to protect us, but it's a survival mechanism to keep us safe. But sometimes it grows so strong, so powerful, it kicks our own ass, literally talks down to us very negatively. And so we beat ourselves up. It's exhausting. It drains energy. It keeps our performance low. And when we get a hold of the story, get the learnings, extract the learnings from it, the wisdom, the reason got us to where we are, you know, then we can share that story with confidence. I mean, when I was 18, I believed early on, also, one of my other limiting beliefs is like, who's going to believe an 18, 19-year-old kid that hasn't ever bought a house? So one of my first things was really get to making calls and buy a house. And by 20, I bought my house. By 21, I lost the house. I got foreclosed on. Well, I can tell you this, you learn a lesson when you get foreclosed on a house. Like, that's the last thing I ever want to go through. So it's like when you've destroyed credit and rebuilt it, you can help others through that guide and that journey. And that's a really big important piece, is getting on stage and being able to run a podcast, share your story. So one of my other things with, my Gray, my twin sister, and I, we got held back. Didn't really know why. Talk about wanting to be a victim, and talk about two human beings. We're 5 minutes apart. We should be the closest human beings on earth as far as like who we are and how well, we communicate together. And we're so different. We're so opposite. We don't look alike. We don't think alike. And when we both got held back, we got put in the same class. And I just remember times where we'd literally be fighting in front of the whole class. And she kind of went this way. I put the chip on my shoulder and it was like, I'm going to kick everyone's ass in sports. All those guys that I'm supposed to be playing with, I'm supposed to be graduated with, I'm going to beat them. So I kind of went at it with this more aggressive, get back, kick some ass. I'm going to win. She did the direct opposite. It really hurt her self-worth. She kind of shrunk. She was always great at school, didn't really like sports, started things, quit things. And that's really the kind of the differences of that story. And I look back and I go, that's the greatest thing that happened to me, because it made me want to get into real estate at 18. It propelled me into business. After I played sports, I was like, I'm done beating up my body. I want to help people. I want to go make some money. And I was driven. I was seeing my dad struggle in the corporate world and seeing him struggle in his own business. Those are all the things that I needed to see, to recognize that so many people in the corporate world, what they struggle with is embracing sales, building a better relationship with money, clearing out their money baggage. We all have money trauma. And I needed to see those things in order to go build $1 million business twice, right? I also needed to be able to see that losing my own business and then rebuilding it again. It's like, hey, we're going to start from scratch, from 15 employees down to 2 virtual assistants. And it's like, cool, we're going to do this again, right? I've done it once, I've done it twice, we can do it again. And those are all the things that I think most entrepreneurs, when you speak of authenticity, can you talk about your story with such transparency, such integrity, that you are truly vibrating the speech, your voice at the highest frequency, the highest authenticity. And that's a tough thing to do, right? When we look in the mirror and go, how am I out of integrity with myself? Where am I out of integrity with myself? Is it health? Is it relationships? Is it the way I talk to somebody else? The way I talk to myself? And I think that's what we're all, the great work. That's what we're up against right now is, how are we going to be a better human being? First and foremost, right, to our family, model, teach our kids, model our family, and then take that, to others. And right now, people need a model. I mean, my brother and I, my older brother and I, we're super close, both into business, both coaches, and we're helping men now. We're very inspired because men have so much on their shoulders, whether they're doing it alone, transitioning out of divorce, weight and health issues. And men are finding it that the option of considering suicide is an option. And I think that's an astronomical problem right now. That should never be an option. And that's because we either don't have brotherhood, we don't have other men to hold us to be able to say, hey, guy, like, get over here. Let's talk about this. Like,
yeah.
How is it that it got this bad to where that's an option? We just had a friend that did that. And it's just like, this is the reason why we need community. This is why we need to come together, not only online, but also in person, because we need that. We need the frequency. We've got to get back into harmony and coherence with our bodies, especially for men, because there's a lot of stress. There's societal programming on that. And that's a really big issue of getting out there and sharing your story, because everybody's story matters. And when you clear that out, you can help somebody who's even 10 times worse than you that needs to hear that story. Even if you haven't perfectly healed, you're 50% healed, or you're 50% like you've gotten better over the last year. And you're like, but I'm not perfect, right? I'm not playing the imposter syndrome. Who am I to go help others? The reality is, like, you need to share your story right where you are, because somebody's 2 steps behind you and they need to hear your story in order to
The best analogy I ever heard was it was like life is a parade, and if you don't step into the parade, somebody behind you isn't going to see what they need. And I had a friend who, he was an alcoholic, he was depressed, he was going bankrupt, and he's like, who am I to help others? And I said, buddy, you got back up on your feet. Even that is such a major victory. Most people don't even, they fall flat on their face and go, I'm just going to lay here for a while. You licked your wounds, you got up. Somebody needs to see you getting up on your feet. And it was fascinating because he ended up going on to become a really powerful coach. But he was like, when I'm recovered, when I'm this, when I'm that, I will then be a coach. And I'm like, no. You just need to say, here's what happened. I like to say that, wow, that was close, or, that happened. And somebody else needs to see you get up. And I think that's huge. Now, Brandon, you're fun and you and I can talk all day. However, I want to be mindful of your time because I know you have a team and somebody's going to throw something at me if I keep you from other things. Where can people go to connect with you, find out what you and Deborah are doing, and how do we find out more about Yager coaching?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got our YouTube channel. You can probably search it both, Your True Alchemy, previously Yager Training. You can hit me on Instagram, Brandon.Yager, I believe is my handle. And if you have a story, because I know there's so many people that have a story, but they're afraid to get it out there. Like that's where we start with people is embracing that story, because when you do, everything else changes. Just like your friend, it's like, doesn't matter if you're healed, doesn't matter if it's perfect. Like, those are the entrepreneurs, those are the coaches and the practitioners that we love working with, because they know there's something missing. There's a gap in their skill set. There's also usually a gap in their tools. So check out our YouTube stuff. We're really diving into the YouTube channel, LinkedIn as well. I mean, we're on LinkedIn as well. So Yager Training, YAGER Training, YagerTraining.com, YourTrueAlchemy.com.
Love it. By the way, I want to just burst a little myth here because I read somewhere that the word alchemy is proof that you use AI. And I've been using alchemy since I was a kid. And the fact that you're talking about alchemy and ancient Egypt, something tells me that you've been using it for a while. So anybody listening going, he used AI. No, I don't believe that. Is that fair?
I mean, alchemy is, a lot of people don't know what alchemy is. So the original chemistry came from alchemy, and chem is Egyptian for taking a dense substance, a dense metal like lead, and refining it to gold. What I love is the metaphor that, calcination, there's 7 stages to alchemy, which is also numerology in there as well. So like when you go down the numerology, symbology path, it's all in there, right? It's sacred geometry and so many other things. But like, building a business is alchemy. Think about it. Yeah. You're going to go through so many stages of alchemy in your lifetime, probably multiple times, 5, 6, 7 times of the 7 stages of alchemy. And we did this in 2022, calcination. Yeah. We burned it to the ground, just like we started this. Like, how many entrepreneurs haven't just said, F it, I'm going to burn the shit to the ground. I'm going to start over. It's not what I want to do. It's not who I wanted to do it with, right? Whether it's a marriage, whether it's our health. And then you refine it, right? You go through the separation phase where you're like separating who you are and who you are not. And then eventually you kind of come to this conjunction phase and you start to refine, okay, this is what I love doing. This is what I do not love doing. And eventually there's this coagulation and it's like refined on the other side. And so we've recently just done this. Like, we literally, between 2022 and now, we 4x'd our business in 2020. We 4x'd our business in 2021. And in 2022, let's calcinate.
Take a breath, burn it down. One thing a friend of mine says, and it resonates with me, is that we're both the lead and the gold. It's just we have to go through those stages, as you put it. Brandon, it was a pleasure having you on the show today, and I want to thank you. You and/or Deborah are always welcome back, and thank you for being on the show.
Absolutely, Jeff. Let's get a podcast on ours as well. We'd love to chat with you. I want to know more about you.
That would be fabulous. Thank you.